Captain Hayes, please don't board that flight to Nassau tomorrow. Your son just tried to use forged medical documents at TSA, claiming you're mentally incompetent and need supervision. Sir, I think something's very wrong here. The voice was young, female, and belonged to someone I'd never met. It was 10:23 p.m. on a Thursday, and I'd been reviewing my flight logbooks from 40 years with Delta, deciding which ones to donate to the Aviation Museum before my son Michael helped me downsize to a smaller condo next month. My reading glasses sat on the kitchen table next to cold coffee, and the last thing I expected was a phone call that would make me question everything I thought I knew about my only child. "Who is this?" I asked, setting down a logbook from 1987, my hands that had piloted 737S through storms suddenly unsteady. Jessica Martinez. I work TSA at O'Hare, the document verification unit. Captain Hayes. I'm calling on my personal cell because what I saw today scared me enough to break about a dozen federal regulations. I pulled the phone away, checked the number. Chicago area code, could be legitimate, could be a scam. At 68, I'd heard every pitch imaginable. But something in the young woman's voice, the specific details, made me listen. "What exactly did you see, Miss Martinez?" "This afternoon, a man came through our security checkpoint. Michael Hayes, your son, according to his ID. He was carrying paperwork, medical power of attorney documents, physician's statements declaring you mentally unfit to travel alone. He told us you have advanced dementia, that you'd be confused and might not recognize him, that we should detain you if you tried to board alone." She paused. "But Captain," the documents looked off. The notary stamps were wrong. The doctor's signature didn't match our database. I flagged it, ran it through verification. Everything came back fraudulent. My chest tightened, not the sharp pain that would ground a pilot, but the slow compression of understanding something terrible. "I haven't been diagnosed with anything," I said slowly. "I just passed my FAA medical exam 3 months ago for my private pilot's license. I'm healthy." "I know, sir. That's why I called. But here's what really disturbed me." Papers rustled on her end. "I pulled airport surveillance from the past 2 months. Your son has been here 4 times, talking to different TSA supervisors, showing them your photo, filing reports about your supposed condition. He's been building a case, establishing a pattern, and tomorrow's trip, the one to Nassau, he's booked on the same flight, seat right next to yours." The kitchen suddenly felt cold despite the Chicago summer heat. Michael, my son, the boy I'd taught to throw a baseball in the backyard, the teenager who'd sat in the jump seat once when he was 16, watching me land in a crosswind, eyes full of admiration. The man who'd stood beside me at his mother Susan's funeral 2 years ago, promising we'd look after each other. "My son has medical power of attorney," I said quietly. "We set it up after his mother died, in case I had a stroke during surgery or something. Sir, someone with that authority has been using it to lay groundwork. And the timing, this trip tomorrow, it's not just vacation. I did some digging." Her voice dropped. "There's a medical facility in Nassau. Private psychiatric hospital. Very expensive, very remote. Your son made inquiries there 3 weeks ago, according to emails I shouldn't have accessed. He was asking about involuntary commitment procedures for American citizens." The logbook in front of me blurred. Susan had been so proud of Michael, our only child, a late baby, born when we were 40. She died suddenly, an aneurysm, no warning. After her death, Michael had been attentive, visiting weekly, helping with paperwork. Always asking about my retirement accounts, my pension from Delta, the life insurance policy worth $2.4 million. "How do you know all this?" I asked. "Because my father went through something similar 18 months ago." Her voice cracked slightly. His business partner tried the same thing, forged medical documents, tried to have Dad declared incompetent, take control of their company. By the time we caught it, he'd already transferred $300,000. We never recovered it. The partner disappeared to Costa Rica. My dad lost his business, his reputation. He's never been the same. She continued, "When I saw those documents today with your name, something in my gut screamed, I couldn't just file a report and go home. I spent the last 6 hours digging through everything I could access. If I'm wrong, I'll lose my job, probably face charges for privacy violations. But if I'm right, Captain Hayes, your son is planning something that goes way beyond theft. I stood, walked to my living room window, looked out at the quiet street in Lincoln Park, the condo I'd bought after Susan died, unable to stay in our house full of memories. Michael had helped me move, had been so supportive. What would you do, Miss Martinez, if you were me? I'd act like you know nothing, go on the trip, but I'd also prepare for the worst. Document everything. And Captain Hayes, I really hope I'm wrong about this. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness for a long time. The trip had been Michael's idea, sprung on me 3 weeks ago. Dad, you've been working so hard settling Mom's estate, getting organized. You deserve a break. Let me and Elena treat you to the Bahamas. You always talked about retiring there. Elena, his fiancée of 6 months. I'd met her twice, maybe 3 times. Beautiful woman, 20 years younger than Michael, vague about her background. She worked in consulting or event planning, depending on which conversation you caught. They lived in a high-rise in the Loop that seemed far too expensive for what Michael did. He called himself a financial advisor, but I'd never quite understood his business. I'd noticed things over the past year, though I'd convinced myself I was being paranoid. Michael's visits had become more frequent, but always rushed. Always questions about my accounts, my estate planning. Dad, you need to update your will. You haven't looked at it since Mom died. He was right about that. He'd even brought his friend, an attorney, to my condo to help review documents. I'd signed some papers, grateful for his concern. Then, 6 weeks ago, my longtime physician, Dr. Patricia Kendall, had mentioned something odd during my annual physical. Robert, your pharmacy records show you've been filling prescriptions I didn't authorize. Cognitive medications, anxiety pills. Everything all right? I'd told her I hadn't ordered anything. She'd looked concerned, made a note, said she'd investigate. I hadn't heard back. I'd meant to follow up, but I'd been busy with the condo renovation, and I'd forgotten. Now, sitting in my dark living room, those pieces were arranging themselves into a picture I didn't want to see. I called Jessica Martinez back. She answered immediately. Miss Martinez, I need to see everything, every document, every piece of evidence you found. Can you meet me tomorrow morning before my flight? Yes, sir. There's a coffee shop on Dearborn, Block 37. 6 a.m. I'll be there. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I went through my files, found the papers Michael had brought 3 months ago. Estate planning updates, he'd said. His lawyer friend had explained them quickly. Complex legal language. I'd signed them, trusting my son. Now, I read them carefully, my years of reviewing flight manuals helping me parse dense text. There it was, buried in Section 9C, transfer of complete power of attorney, financial and medical, effective upon any physician's declaration of cognitive impairment. I'd signed away control of everything to Michael, the condo worth $800,000, my Delta pension paying $6,200 monthly, my 401k with $1.8 million. The life insurance policy Susan and I had maintained, now worth $2.4 million with me as the sole beneficiary, Michael as the heir. Total, over $5 million, more than enough motive for murder disguised as mercy. My hands shook as I read. How could I have been so stupid? But I knew how. He was my son, my only family left. At 5:45 a.m., I walked into Block 37. Jessica Martinez was already there, a young Latina woman with determined eyes and a laptop covered in travel stickers. She stood when she saw me, offered her hand. Captain Hayes, thank you for coming. We sat in the back corner. She opened her laptop, angled it toward me. I printed everything, but I want you to see the digital trail too. Here, for the next 90 minutes, she walked me through it. The forged medical documents, progressively more sophisticated over 3 months. The psychiatric facility in Nassau, Serenity Bay, where a bed was reserved under my name starting tomorrow, cost $15,000 per week. The emails between Michael and the facility director discussing difficult patient management and secure accommodations. There's more, Jessica said quietly. She pulled up credit card statements. I accessed the account linked to your son's business. 3 weeks ago, someone used this card to increase your life insurance policy to $3.2 million. Beneficiary still listed as Michael Hayes. That's almost $1 million more, I said, my voice hollow. And there's this. She showed me a purchase from a medical supply company. Sedatives. Hospital grade. Enough to keep someone unconscious for days. Shipped to your son's address 2 weeks ago. I pushed my coffee away, untouched. My son is planning to have me committed to a psychiatric hospital overseas, declared incompetent. And then what? Overdose made to look like suicide? An accident? Jessica nodded, tears in her eyes. I think so. I'm so sorry. I looked at this young woman who'd risked her career to warn a stranger. Why did you do this? You could have just filed a standard report. She was quiet for a moment, because nobody believed my father. By the time anyone took it seriously, he'd lost everything. His business, his savings, his health. He's 62 and working as a night security guard now because his credit is destroyed. She looked up. I saw your file, Captain Hayes. You flew for 40 years. You saved lives. You don't deserve this. Nobody does. I reached across the table, gripped her hand. Thank you, Jessica. Truly. What are you going to do? I sat back, my mind calculating like it used to in the cockpit when weather turned bad. I'm going to Nassau. Sir, I'm going to Nassau, I repeated, but not the way Michael planned. I pulled out my phone. First call went to Dr. Kendall. She answered immediately, concerned. Robert, what's wrong? I told her everything. Watched her face change from confusion to fury. He forged my prescriptions? Robert, that's a felony. We need to report this immediately. Not yet, Patricia. I need your help first. I need a complete medical evaluation. Cognitive tests, psychiatric assessment, everything. Documented proof that I'm of sound mind. Can you do it today? She understood instantly. You're building a case. Robert, this is dangerous. I know, but I'm not dying in the Bahamas, Patricia. I'm ending this my way. Dr. Kendall cleared her schedule. By 2 p.m., I had a complete neurological workup, cognitive scores in the superior range for my age, psychiatric evaluation confirming no signs of dementia, incompetence, or diminished capacity. Everything notarized, dated, unimpeachable. Second call went to my attorney, David Walsh. 30 years he'd handled my affairs. Robert, the documents Michael had you sign are legally binding unless we can prove fraud or duress. We can prove it, David. I have evidence. Bring me everything. I'll file emergency motions to revoke the power of attorney. But Robert, this takes time. Weeks, maybe months. I don't have months. I have 24 hours. You're still going? Absolutely. My third call was harder. Tom Bradley, retired FBI, now private investigator. We'd met 20 years ago when he'd flown standby on one of my flights, and we'd bonded over bourbon in the cockpit jump seat during a maintenance delay. Jesus, Robert. Your own son? I need help, Tom. Someone in Nassau watching my back. Someone who can intervene if things go sideways. You're using yourself as bait. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. Tom was quiet, then sighed. I know a guy in Nassau, former Scotland Yard, runs security for resorts. Discreet. I'll make the call. But Robert, this is dangerous as hell. I've flown through typhoons, Tom. I can handle my son. The next morning, Michael picked me up, all smiles. Dad, you ready for paradise? I hugged him, memorized how it felt. This might be the last time I embraced my son before everything fell apart. Excited, I said. Haven't been to Nassau since your mother and I went for our 30th anniversary. Elena waited in the car, perfectly made up, designer sunglasses. Captain Hayes, so wonderful to do this together. At O'Hare, I spotted Jessica Martinez at the TSA checkpoint. She gave me the slightest nod. Everything was documented. Every move Michael made from here forward was being watched. Michael was attentive on the flight. Too attentive. Dad, you look tired. Did you sleep? Not much, I admitted. True enough. Here, take this. He handed me a small pill. Just Benadryl. Help you rest. I palmed it, pretended to swallow, tucked it into my pocket. Later, I'd give it to Tom's contact for analysis. The Nassau resort was beautiful. Luxury villa on a private beach. Michael and Elena had the main suite. They'd given me the guest room, ground floor, with a private entrance. Dad, you should rest, Michael said, showing me to my room. Elena and I will be at the pool. Dinner at 7 on the terrace. Just us. I unpacked slowly, checking the room. Found what I expected. Tiny cameras in the smoke detector, the clock radio, the bathroom mirror. Michael had been thorough. I smiled at them, waved, let him think I suspected nothing. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Villa adjacent, clear sightline. Name's Colin. Tom sent me. Touch your left ear if you need help. Right ear if you're okay. I stepped onto the balcony, stretched, casually touched my right ear. Dinner was grilled, fish and lies. Michael asked about my health, my condo plans, whether I'd updated my will recently. This is important, Dad, he said, reaching across the table. His palm was sweaty, making sure everything is organized. You know, just in case. In case what? In case anything happens. You're getting older. It's responsible to plan. I squeezed his hand, looked into his eyes, saw nothing familiar there. You're right. After this trip, let's sit down with David Walsh, review everything together. Something flickered across Michael's face. Fear? Anger? It vanished quickly. Sure, Dad. Whatever you want. That night, I didn't sleep. Sat in a chair facing the door, listening. At 3:17 a.m., I heard it. My door opening quietly. Footsteps on the tile. I kept my breathing even, eyes nearly closed, watching through my lashes. Michael stood in the doorway, holding a syringe. He stood there for a long time, staring at the pillows I'd arranged under the blanket to look like a sleeping body. Then he turned and left. I heard him crying softly in the hallway. The next morning, Elena suggested an activity. There's a wonderful diving excursion, Captain Hayes. They take you out to the blue holes. Beautiful formations. Very deep. Very deep. Perfect for an accident. Sounds wonderful, I said. We boarded a dive boat at 10 a.m. Small group, just us and 2 other couples. The dive operator, a weathered Bahamian named Marcus, went through safety procedures. Michael paid careful attention, asking about depth limits, emergency protocols, decompression sickness. Elena handed me rental gear. The wetsuit might be a little big, Captain. They didn't have your exact size. Too big. Harder to swim in. More likely to slip off. Colin had texted me overnight with details. The dive site was 80 feet deep. Dangerous for older divers. Easy to make a panic incident look natural, especially if someone tampered with equipment. I checked my gear carefully. Found it. The O-ring on my air tank slightly loosened. Not enough to notice during safety check, but enough to fail under pressure at depth. Marcus, I called the operator over. Can you check this O-ring? Feels off. He examined it, face darkening. This is loose. Could have caused a catastrophic failure at depth. Who prepped this gear? Michael had gone pale. Must have been an accident. Good thing you checked, Dad. Good thing, I agreed. I asked Marcus for different equipment, double-checked everything myself. Years of aviation safety checks applied to scuba gear. The dive was beautiful. Massive blue holes, shafts of sunlight piercing the depths. I stayed close to Marcus, kept Michael in my peripheral vision. He kept looking at Elena, some kind of signal, but she shook her head slightly. Wrong opportunity, too many witnesses. Back on the boat, Michael was agitated, checking his phone constantly. That evening, he suggested a walk. Just you and me, Dad. Along the beach, like old times. I'd like that. We walked toward the deserted end of the resort property. The sun was setting, painting the water gold. It reminded me of a sunset I'd seen from 35,000 feet, flying over the Pacific with Susan in the jump seat, celebrating our 25th anniversary. Dad, I need to talk to you about something serious. Michael stopped, turned to face me. Behind him, the beach was empty, private, isolated. What is it, son? I'm worried about you. Your memory, your judgment. Elena noticed it too. You've been forgetting things, getting confused. We think you need help. What kind of help? There's a facility here. Serenity Bay. Very nice, very professional. They specialize in cognitive care for seniors. We could get you evaluated, just to be safe. I see. I pulled out my phone, showed him Dr. Kendall's evaluation from yesterday. Complete cognitive assessment, superior scores, no impairment whatsoever. His face went white. When did you do this? Yesterday, right after Jessica Martinez from TSA called me about the forged medical documents you tried to use. The ones claiming I have dementia. Michael stumbled backward. Dad, I can explain. Can you explain the psychiatric facility you've already reserved for me? The emails discussing involuntary commitment? The sedatives you bought? The loosened O-ring on my dive gear today? You don't understand. We're in debt. Elena's ex-husband is threatening us. We owe people. Dangerous people. And you're sitting on millions, Dad. Millions you'll leave to some charity when you die anyway. We're your family. We need this. We deserve this. So, you decided to speed things along? You're old. You've lived a good life. Mom's gone. You're alone anyway. What difference does it make if it's now or in 10 years? The worst part was, he believed it. He'd rationalized murder into mercy. Michael, when you were 7, you asked me why airplanes don't fall out of the sky. Remember? He nodded, tears streaming. I told you it's because pilots make thousands of small correct choices. Every flight, every decision. That's what separates a safe landing from a crash. Choices. I stepped closer. Your mother chose to fight for every day she had, even when she knew the aneurysm could happen any time. She chose love and presence, right up to the end. You chose something different. Dad, please. We can fix this. I'll get help. Just don't, what? Press charges? Colin emerged from behind a palm tree, no longer hiding. British accent, ex-military bearing. Captain Hayes, you all right? I'm fine, Colin. Thank you. Michael looked between us, understanding dawning. You set me up. I protected myself. There's a difference. I turned to Colin. Can you call the local authorities? I'll press charges. All of them. Fraud, attempted murder, everything. Michael collapsed to his knees. Elena came running from the villa, saw the scene, turned and sprinted toward the parking lot. Colin made a call. She was detained at the airport 20 minutes later. The next 3 days were a blur of police statements, lawyer calls, evidence compilation. Jessica Martinez flew to Nassau on her own money, brought hard copies of everything from TSA. The Bahamian police were thorough, found the sedatives in Michael's luggage, the emails on his laptop, the increased life insurance policy, the reservation at Serenity Bay. The extradition to the U.S. took 2 months. The trial was 4 months after that. I sat in the federal courthouse in Chicago and listened to prosecutors lay out the evidence. Michael's lawyer tried to paint him as desperate, mentally unwell, manipulated by Elena. Elena's lawyer blamed Michael, said she'd been coerced. Neither story held up against the evidence. The jury took 5 hours. Conspiracy to commit murder, elder fraud, attempted kidnapping, insurance fraud. The judge was a woman in her 60s who looked at me with something like sympathy. Mr. Michael Hayes, you are sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Miss Elena Rodriguez, you are sentenced to 8 years. Michael looked at me as they led him away, mouthed the word Dad, but no sound came out. I looked away. Outside the courthouse, Jessica Martinez was waiting. She'd used vacation days to fly out for the sentencing. Captain Hayes, how are you holding up? Honestly, I don't know. I sat on the courthouse steps, suddenly exhausted. He's my son, Jessica, my only child, and I just sent him to federal prison. She sat beside me. You didn't send him anywhere. He made his choices. You just refuse to die for them. Doesn't make it hurt less. No, she agreed. I guess it doesn't. We sat in silence, watching people stream in and out of the courthouse. My dad asked me to tell you something, Jessica said eventually. He said that choosing yourself over family expectations doesn't make you selfish. It makes you strong. And he's grateful that I got to help you, because maybe it made up a little for what happened to him. I looked at this young woman who'd risked everything. Your father raised a remarkable daughter, and Jessica, you saved my life. I owe you more than thanks. You don't owe me anything. I disagree. We exchanged information, promised to stay in touch. She flew back to Chicago. I drove to Lincoln Park. The next week, I called my attorney. David, I need to make some changes to my estate. Over the following days, I rewrote everything. First, I established the Susan Hayes Foundation for Elder Financial Protection, funded with $500,000, dedicated to helping elderly people avoid the kind of exploitation I'd nearly fallen victim to. Second, I set up a specific trust, $200,000 for Mr. Martinez, Jessica's father, to rebuild his business or retire comfortably, whichever he chose. Not as payment, but as recognition that his daughter's courage came from somewhere. Third, I endowed a scholarship at TSA for young officers pursuing careers in fraud prevention, named in Jessica's honor. $300,000, enough to fund 10 students per year for a decade. Fourth, I established a fund for Colin's security company in Nassau, enabling him to provide free protection services for vulnerable tourists, $150,000. The rest, the remaining millions, would go to aviation safety programs, pilot scholarships, and medical charities Susan and I had always supported. When I called Jessica to tell her, she couldn't speak for a full minute. Finally, Captain Hayes, you didn't have to do any of this. Yes, I did. You risked your job, possibly criminal charges, to save a stranger. That's not something I just thank and forget. Your father will receive the details this week. He can use it to restart his business or retire. His choice. Captain Hayes, I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay in touch. Say you'll keep being the kind of person who makes that phone call when something feels wrong. 2 weeks later, a package arrived at my condo. Inside was a framed photo, Mr. Martinez standing in front of a newly opened consulting office, Martinez Security Solutions. The sign gleamed. He was smiling, really smiling, for what looked like the first time in years. A note was attached in Jessica's handwriting. Dad cried when he got the news. He said to tell you that some people are family by blood, and others are family by choice. You chose well. Thank you for seeing the value in strangers who do the right thing. Thank you for showing me that good people still win sometimes. I kept that photo on my desk. Next to it, I placed another. Jessica, at her promotion ceremony 6 months later. TSA had created a new position for her, Director of Document Fraud Prevention for the Midwest region. At 27, she was the youngest person ever appointed to the role. Tom Bradley called me one afternoon. Robert, you did good. That girl's making waves. She's caught 3 more cases similar to yours. 3 more families saved. That's Jessica's doing, not mine. You gave her the resources and the recognition. That matters. Michael will be eligible for parole in 8 years. I don't know if I'll attend the hearing. Some days, I think I will, that I'll tell him I forgive him. Most days, I know I won't. But I do know this. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up at 10:23 p.m. to warn you. It's about who risks their career because their gut says something's wrong. It's about who stands beside you when everything falls apart. Jessica Martinez is more family to me than Michael ever was. The young woman who made a phone call that could have cost her everything because someone needed help. I'm 72 now, 4 years later. Still living in Lincoln Park, still flying my Cessna on weekends. Started volunteering with the Susan Hayes Foundation, giving talks at senior centers about financial protection. Met a widow named Margaret at one of those talks. She's 68, sharp as a tack, makes me laugh. We have coffee every Thursday. Jessica and her father come to Chicago every Christmas. We have dinner, swap stories, toast to Susan's memory. Mr. Martinez's business is thriving. He hired 3 employees this year. Jessica got engaged to another TSA officer who shares her passion for protecting people. Last month, I stood as her father's best man at their wedding. When he asked me, he said, "You gave me back my life, Robert. The least I can do is share my daughter's happiness with you." I told him he had it backwards, but he wouldn't listen. Sometimes late at night, I think about that moment when my bedroom door opened at 3:17 a.m. in Nassau. My son standing there with a syringe. How close I came to being another statistic, another elderly person who had a tragic accident on vacation. And I think about all the people who don't get that phone call, who trust too much, question too little, and pay the ultimate price. But then I look at the photos on my desk. Jessica and her father, Colin and his team, the seniors we've helped through the foundation, the pilots we've trained, Margaret's smile over Thursday coffee. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is believe a stranger when they say something's wrong. Sometimes the family you choose is worth more than the family you're given. And sometimes refusing to be a victim is the greatest gift you can give yourself. I'm grateful every day for that phone call at 10:23 p.m., for Jessica's courage, for the second chance at life, at purpose, at family. That's worth more than $5 million. Worth more than anything Michael tried to take. It's worth everything.